Imagine a world where dragonflies have wingspans wider than eagles, scorpions grow larger than wolves, and millipedes stretch longer than alligators. This isn't science fiction, it's Earth's forgotten history. For over 150 million years, our planet belonged to arthropods of nightmarish proportions, creatures so massive they would dwarf any insect alive today. These weren't gentle giants peacefully coexisting with early life. They were apex predators, armored behemoths, and flying terrors that dominated land, sea, and air with ruthless efficiency. Tonight, we journey back to an era when oxygen levels soared, evolution ran wild, and insects became monsters. This is the story of the mega-arthropods, the titans that once ruled Earth, and the extraordinary world that allowed them to grow so impossibly, terrifyingly large. The underwater nightmare. Our story begins not on land, but beneath the waves, in the murky depths of ancient seas. Here, 390 million years ago during the Devonian period, lurked one of the most formidable predators ever to exist, Jaekelopterus rhenaniae. At 8 feet in length, Jaekelopterus was the largest arthropod ever discovered. To put that in perspective, this creature was longer than most humans are tall. It prowled rivers and estuaries with the confidence of an apex predator that had no natural enemies. But size alone doesn't make a predator terrifying. What made Jaekelopterus truly fearsome were its claws, massive, serrated appendages lined with tooth-like projections. These weren't simple pincers for crushing. They were precision cutting instruments designed to slice through flesh and armor with surgical efficiency. Fossil evidence reveals that fish during this period began developing increasingly thick armor plating. This wasn't coincidental. When prey species evolve defensive adaptations, it's usually in response to a specific threat. In this case, the threat was Jaekelopterus and its razor-sharp claws. Scientists have reconstructed how Jaekelopterus hunted by studying its anatomy and comparing it to modern predators. It likely ambushed prey from murky water, using its excellent vision to track movement. Once a target was identified, those massive claws would strike with devastating speed and force. The serrations along the claw edges served a dual purpose. They helped grip struggling prey and inflicted maximum tissue damage. A single strike could disable or kill most creatures in its environment. There was no escape, no second chances. What's particularly chilling is that Jaekelopterus occupied the absolute top of the food chain. Nothing preyed on adult Jaekelopterus. It was the undisputed ruler of its aquatic domain, free to hunt without fear of becoming prey itself. This dominance lasted for millions of years, far longer than humans have existed as a species. Jaekelopterus represents evolution's early experiment with gigantism in arthropods, and it was remarkably successful. Terror on land. While Jaekelopterus dominated the water, another nightmare was evolving on land. Meet Pulmonoscorpius kirktonensis, a scorpion that would make modern species look like harmless toys. Living 335 million years ago during the Carboniferous period, Pulmonoscorpius inhabited what is now Scotland. But this wasn't the cold, misty Scotland we know today. This was a warm, humid tropical environment, a paradise of giant ferns and dense vegetation. And crawling through this paradise was a scorpion measuring 28 inches in length, roughly the size of a large house cat. Unlike modern scorpions that are primarily nocturnal and reclusive, Pulmonoscorpius possessed large, well-developed eyes adapted for daytime hunting. This meant it actively stalked prey during daylight hours, using its excellent vision to track movement across considerable distances. There was no hiding from Pulmonoscorpius. If it saw you, it was already planning its attack. The stinger was proportionally massive, capable of delivering venom in quantities that would overwhelm most creatures. Modern scorpion venom varies in potency, but even small doses can cause excruciating pain. Scale that up to a scorpion the size of a cat, and you're looking at a potentially lethal weapon. What made Pulmonoscorpius particularly dangerous was its hunting strategy. While modern scorpions typically grab prey with their pedipalps before stinging, Pulmonoscorpius could lead with its stinger. The sheer size and reach of that tail meant it could strike from a distance, puncturing through exoskeletons and flesh with ease. Fossil evidence suggests Pulmonoscorpius fed primarily on other arthropods and early amphibians. But in the Carboniferous world, other arthropods included creatures of considerable size. This wasn't a scorpion picking off tiny insects. This was an apex predator taking down substantial prey. The Carboniferous period was characterized by extremely high oxygen levels, up to 35% compared to today's 21%. This atmospheric richness allowed arthropods to grow to unprecedented sizes, and Pulmonoscorpius took full advantage. The Flying Menace. If giant scorpions on land weren't terrifying enough, the Carboniferous period also produced flying predators of nightmarish proportions. Meganeuropsis permiana represents the largest flying insect ever to exist, with a wingspan reaching 28 inches. Meganeuropsis was comparable in size to a modern hawk. But unlike birds, which are warm-blooded and relatively intelligent, Meganeuropsis was a cold-blooded insect operating on pure predatory instinct. Modern dragonflies are among the most efficient hunters in the animal kingdom, with success rates exceeding 95%. They can calculate trajectory, predict prey movement, and intercept targets with remarkable precision. Now imagine that level of hunting sophistication in an insect with a wingspan exceeding 2 feet. Meganeuropsis possessed enormous compound eyes that provided nearly 360-degree vision. It could track multiple targets simultaneously while in flight, selecting the most vulnerable prey. Once a target was identified, Meganeuropsis would accelerate to intercept, using its powerful mandibles to seize and crush. The mandibles were strong enough to bite through the exoskeletons of other large insects and the skin of early amphibians. Fossil evidence suggests Meganeuropsis was a generalist predator, feeding on anything it could overpower and carry. What made flying predators particularly dangerous was their three-dimensional hunting capability. Ground-based creatures could hide behind rocks or vegetation. But against an aerial predator with excellent vision and superior speed, there was nowhere to hide. The high oxygen levels of the Carboniferous period were essential to Meganeuropsis' existence. Insects don't have lungs. They breathe through a network of tubes called tracheae. This system becomes less efficient as body size increases. But with atmospheric oxygen at 35%, these tubes could supply enough oxygen to support massive body sizes. When oxygen levels eventually declined, giant insects like Meganeuropsis disappeared. The atmospheric conditions that allowed them to exist were temporary, a brief window in Earth's history when insects could grow to monstrous proportions. The gentle giant. Not all giant arthropods were predators. Some were herbivores, peacefully grazing on decaying vegetation. But peaceful doesn't mean harmless, as Arthropleura demonstrates. Arthropleura was a millipede that grew up to 8 feet in length and weighed several hundred pounds. It's the largest land invertebrate ever discovered, a creature so massive it defies our modern understanding of what arthropods can be. Living during the Carboniferous period, Arthropleura inhabited dense forests of giant ferns and early trees. It fed primarily on decaying plant matter and fungi, playing a crucial role in nutrient recycling within these ancient ecosystems. But despite its herbivorous diet, Arthropleura was potentially dangerous simply due to its size. An 8-foot millipede weighing hundreds of pounds doesn't need to be aggressive to cause harm. Accidental encounters could be fatal. Modern millipedes possess defensive glands that secrete toxic or irritating chemicals when threatened. Some species produce hydrogen cyanide, while others secrete caustic substances that burn skin. Arthropleura likely possessed similar defenses, but scaled up to match its enormous body size. Imagine encountering Arthropleura in a Carboniferous forest. You hear rustling in the undergrowth and turn to see what appears to be an armored bus with dozens of legs moving toward you. Even if it has no interest in you whatsoever, the sheer mass and momentum would be overwhelming. Getting stepped on by Arthropleura would be catastrophic. Those hundreds of pounds concentrated into relatively small leg segments would crush bone and tissue instantly. And if it felt threatened and released defensive chemicals, you'd be dealing with potentially blinding or burning secretions in quantity sufficient to cover a large area. Arthropleura represents an important ecological role often overlooked when discussing prehistoric giants. Not everything was a predator. Some creatures were simply trying to survive, eating plants and avoiding danger. But in a world of giants, even the herbivores were dangerous. The Cambrian Pioneer. To understand the full story of giant arthropods, we must travel even further back in time, to 505 million years ago during the Cambrian period. Here we find Anomalocaris, Earth's first apex predator. Anomalocaris looked like nothing else that had ever existed. It possessed a segmented body up to 3 feet long, 2 large frontal appendages covered in spines, and a circular mouth lined with plates that functioned like a biological blender. This was the Cambrian explosion, a period of rapid evolutionary innovation when most major animal groups first appeared. Life was experimenting with different body plans, and Anomalocaris represented one of the most successful early designs. The frontal appendages were flexible and powerful, capable of grasping prey and bringing it to the mouth. The spines along these appendages prevented escape, holding struggling victims in place while the mouth plates worked to crush and tear. Fossil evidence shows Anomalocaris fed primarily on trilobites, the dominant arthropods of the Cambrian seas. Trilobite fossils have been found with distinctive circular bite marks, matching Anomalocaris' mouth structure perfectly. These weren't random injuries, they were deliberate predation events. What made Anomalocaris particularly formidable was its vision. It possessed compound eyes with over 16,000 individual lenses, providing exceptional visual acuity. It could detect movement from considerable distances and track prey with precision. For millions of years, Anomalocaris dominated Cambrian seas without competition. It was larger, faster, and better equipped than anything else in its environment. This dominance established a template for future apex predators. Excellent senses, powerful weapons, and the size to intimidate potential threats. Anomalocaris eventually went extinct, but its legacy continued. The predatory strategies it pioneered, ambush hunting, visual tracking, and powerful grasping appendages, would be refined and repeated by countless species over the next 500 million years. The Amphibious Hunter. One of the most remarkable adaptations in arthropod evolution was the ability to function in multiple environments. Brontoscorpio anglicus exemplifies this versatility. Living 430 million years ago during the Silurian period, Brontoscorpio was approximately 1 meter long and capable of hunting both underwater and on land. This amphibious lifestyle gave it a tremendous advantage over prey species adapted to only one environment. The name Brontoscorpio means thunder scorpion, a fitting designation for a creature that could pursue prey across environmental boundaries. If you fled into the water, Brontoscorpio followed. If you retreated to land, it crawled after you. There was no safe zone, no refuge. The stinger was proportionally large and almost certainly venomous. Modern scorpions use venom to subdue prey and defend against threats. Brontoscorpio's venom was likely potent enough to quickly incapacitate creatures of considerable size. What made Brontoscorpio's hunting strategy particularly effective was the element of surprise. Prey species adapted to aquatic predators wouldn't expect an attack to continue onto land. Similarly, terrestrial creatures wouldn't anticipate a threat emerging from the water. This amphibious capability required significant physiological adaptations. Brontoscorpio needed to manage respiration in both environments, maintain mobility on different substrates, and regulate body temperature across varying conditions. The fact that it successfully managed all these challenges speaks to its evolutionary sophistication. Pulmonoscorpius represents an important transitional form in arthropod evolution. It demonstrates that the move from water to land wasn't a single dramatic event, but a gradual process involving species that could function in both environments. The original Titan. Our journey through the age of giant arthropods concludes where it began, with the Eurypterids, the sea scorpions that dominated ancient oceans for over 200 million years. And among these remarkable creatures, one stands out as the prototype for all that followed, Jaekelopterus decaying. Living 467 million years ago during the Ordovician period, Jaekelopterus was 5 feet 7 inches of armored predatory perfection. It represents one of the earliest examples of a large, complex arthropod predator, and it set the standard for everything that came after. The name Jaekelopterus references ancient Greek warships called penteconers, fast vessels powered by 50 oars. This comparison is apt because Jaekelopterus was built for speed and efficiency, cutting through water with remarkable agility for its size. Fossil evidence from Iowa reveals extraordinary preservation, allowing scientists to observe minute details of Jaekelopterus's anatomy. Individual hairs, skin patterns, and joint structures are visible, providing unprecedented insight into how this creature lived and hunted. Jaekelopterus possessed powerful grasping claws, a heavily armored carapace, and possibly a tail spike for additional defense or offense. It was perfectly adapted to its role as an apex predator in the confined waters of a meteor crater lagoon. This habitat, a relatively small, enclosed body of water, meant Jaekelopterus and its prey were in constant proximity. There were no vast oceans to escape into, no distant shores to reach. Everything in that lagoon was within Jaekelopterus's hunting range. The success of Jaekelopterus's body plan is evident in its persistence. Eurypterids would continue to dominate aquatic ecosystems for another 200 million years, diversifying into hundreds of species, but always maintaining the basic template established by Jaekelopterus. The age of giant arthropods lasted over 200 million years, far longer than mammals have dominated Earth. These creatures weren't evolutionary mistakes or dead ends. They were supremely successful organisms perfectly adapted to their environments. When atmospheric conditions changed and oxygen levels declined, the giants disappeared, but their legacy remains. They remind us that Earth's history is filled with worlds stranger than imagination, and that dominance, no matter how complete, is always temporary. Life adapts, evolves, and continues,